Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a voiceover makeup tutorial of this New Year's Eve look. I wore it in 2017 when I went to Universal Studios' what's it called? New Year's Eve party, where the entire theme park turns into a party. It was so much fun and I just love this look, but I never filmed it, so I'm bringing it to you guys this year. It's so much fun. We have a little bit of glitter, mostly just like purples shadows happening. So if you're interested to see how I created this look, then go ahead and keep on watching. The first product I'm going to be using today is the Naked Skin Concealer by Urban Decay, and I'm going to be using this as an eyeshadow base. Now the reason that I want to do this is because I'm going to be using a light lilac color as a pop of color on the lid, so I want to make sure that any darkness or discoloration that's there naturally is covered. Then I'm going to go in with MAC Blanc Type. This is just a bone colored shadow that's going to help us set the base that we just created with the concealer. This is going to make sure that any and all shadows that we placed on top are easily blended out instead of sticking to any wetness from the concealer. The first transition shade that I'm going to be using is the color Hopscotch by Makeup Geek. This is just a single shadow that she sells that I have placed in my own custom Z palette, and I am just taking that on a Sigma E40 blending brush. This is just a really fluffy blending brush, and I'm placing this into my crease, mostly in the outer corner, but making sure that I get into that inner corner as well. For this step, you want to slowly add light layers and build up the color and intensity, because this is where you're going to be starting to create the shape of the eyeshadow that you want, and you're creating the color that's going to be peeking out in the background of your look. So I just slowly start layering layers of this shade Hopscotch and deepen that socket, and I start to create a little bit of a cat eye structured shape in the outer corner of the eye. I'm bringing the shadow out and elongating my eye shape with this shadow. I personally do not prefer to work one eye at a time. I like to go back and forth. That way I can make sure that I am matching the intensity, I'm matching the shape, and I'm matching the colors, and I don't forget any steps. So I go back and forth from left eye to right eye, and I make sure that I'm blending everything out seamlessly and evenly. To begin deepening up the crease, I'm going to be taking the shade Fairy Tale, also by Makeup Geek, and I'm taking it on the same blending brush. This is the Sigma E40, and I am basically going to be going over top everywhere that I just placed down the initial first shadow. And this is just going to add a lot of dimension to the eye look. Instead of it looking flat, this is going to look three-dimensional, not two-dimensional, and it's going to make your blending look a lot cleaner, a lot more seamless, a lot more airbrushed. When creating the shape with your transition shade, you really want to make sure that you are taking your time, like I said earlier, because this is where you're creating the entire shape and the foundation of the rest of your eye look. So I take about 15 minutes just blending out my transition shades to make sure that everything is looking the way that I want it to before I go in and start deepening and adding my lid color and adding anything else. This is where I spend the majority of my time, is blending, blending, blending. Now that we've mapped out our initial shape, I'm going to be going in with this gray shade called Concrete Jungle. I've chosen this one because it is a cool tone gray, and I'm going to be using a slightly more precise blending brush. This is the Sigma E25. It's my favorite brush for really deepening the crease, and this is where I'm going to start creating a little bit of a cut crease look. It's not really a cut crease, but I do want to make sure that I'm adding some definition in the crease, because I'm going to be using this shadow to create a bit of a halo look, which means that I'm going to be putting color on the inner third and outer third of my eye, but leaving the middle bare for another color to go in the center. So I'm deepening up that crease, back and forth motions with my brush, and then I'm going to go ahead and start packing the shadow on the inner and outer corner of the eye, which you will see next. But you want to make sure that you really place down this shadow and blend it out seamlessly, so that when you do start packing the shadow in the inner and outer corners of the lid, then everything blends out smoothly. Sticking with this same shade before I create that halo effect, I'm going to be using it to create and deepen that outer corner cat eye shape the same way that I did with the transition shade. I'm just building up on these colors to make sure that everything looks seamless and flawless. Now we're ready to start creating that halo effect on the lid. I'm grabbing the shade Stealth, and I'm putting this on a clean E25 blending brush, and I'm just packing some of the shadow on the brush and then pushing it onto the outer corner of my lid and then pushing it to the inner corner of my lid while keeping the center bare. And then as you press that shadow onto the lid and into the color that we have in the crease, it is going to blend itself out naturally so that you barely have to do any extra blending work with this shade and this step. You want to make sure that you are working in light layers here. Don't load up the brush with too much product at once. Put a little bit on the brush, pack it on, blend it out, add a little bit more, pack it on, blend it out. You can always add more color. You can't really blend away once you put too much. It's a lot harder that way. Moving on to the center of the lid, I love this shade. This is Wisteria by Makeup Geek as well. All these shadows are Makeup Geek. And I'm just placing this on a flat shader brush. Any flat shading brush that you have will work. I am loading up the brush and I am placing this on the center of the lid. If you have some sort of white eyeshadow base that you want to place on right before you put this color on, then it'll probably show up a bit more opaque than it did for me, but I just went for it and I put it straight on. And after a few layers, it did show up the way that I wanted it to, but it would have probably been easier if I went in with a base again, just specifically for this step. But just pack that shade on right in the center of the lid, and then take whatever is left on your brush from when you place the color from the inner and outer corner and blend everything into one another. So here's where we're going to start mapping out the beginning of where we're placing our glitter liner later. I'm taking the shade Shimma Shimma and I'm placing it on a dome shadow brush, and I'm putting it from the inner tear duct of my eyeball, and I'm starting to map it out into the beginning of the crease. And then that's where we leave the eyes until we work on the face. For foundation today, I wanted something matte since we're doing so much glitter as an accent on the lid. So I'm taking this Burberry Matte Glow Foundation in the shade Medium Cool 70, and I'm taking that on a Morphe makeup sponge, and I'm just going to be blending this out all over the skin. I use a very light layer of foundation when I put foundation on, because I go in with any sort of spot concealing where necessary. I prefer going in with concealer and covering the areas that need to be covered over doing such a heavy layer of foundation initially. This allows for more of my natural skin to peek through, and it doesn't look as heavy and mask-like. I just prefer that look. For concealer, I'm using the Too Faced Born This Way Multi-Use Sculpting Concealer in Natural Beige. I love this concealer so much. I recommend it to absolutely everybody. I'm just placing this in the highest points of my face to add some highlight to the skin. So I'm placing it first underneath the eyes and the outer corners of the eyes, and I'm going to be blending it out in an upside down triangle at the tops of my cheeks and bringing it up to my temples. That's going to bring that whole area forward and create some natural shadows in the cheekbones and around the forehead, where I would naturally want to add a little bit of shadow and contouring. This is going to make the next step a lot easier. To add a bit of warmth and begin sculpting the face and add some natural definition, I'm going to be going in with my cream bronzer by Chanel and an angled brush by Practic. I love these two products together, the brush and the bronzer. It just makes applying it so easy. I'm putting it in the hollows of my cheeks, and then I'm creating a bit of a C shape to kind of scoop the apples of my cheeks and add a bit of definition right there as well. And again, I'm pushing this product into the skin because if you add any swiping motions, you will disrupt the foundation and concealer you have underneath it, and you'll end up taking away product rather than putting on. To set underneath the eyes and make sure that we don't crease throughout the evening, I am going to be setting with the Laura Mercier Translucent Setting Powder and the sharper edge of my Morphe makeup sponge. I'm just pushing the powder into the skin, that way it melts into the skin and doesn't just sit on top. This is going to add a little bit of an airbrush effect to the skin rather than a heavy powdered look. I like to leave a little excess powder in my T-zone area that I'll blend away later to absorb any excess oil. For highlighter today, I'm going to be going in with this one from Dior in shade 001 and using an Anastasia A23 highlight brush. I'm going to be starting this from the apples of my cheeks and then bringing it up on the cheekbone to add some natural highlight where the sun would naturally hit. For my powder bronzer today, I'm using this one by Burberry. This is the Warm Glow Natural Bronzer in shade number 1, and I'm using a Real Techniques powder brush to just lightly buff this color right over where I put the cream bronzer earlier and blending it on the cheeks. For blush today, I love this shade. It's Rose by Laura Mercier, and I'm using that on a blush brush from Practic, and I'm just starting on the apples of my cheeks and blending it upward in between where I put my highlighter and my bronzer. For my brows today, I'm going to be adding some definition with my Anastasia brow pencil in the shade Dark Brown. I like to add a little bit more shape and structure to the underneath part of my brows as well as the outer corner of the tops. I just make them a little bit more round instead of the naturally sharp and more square shape that my brows have. For my lower lash line, I'm grabbing a pencil brush in the shade Concrete Jungle, and I'm going back and forth on the entire lower lash line and then bringing it up and around to connect the lower lash line to the outer corner. And then to add a little bit of something fun, I'm taking the shade Chit Chat, which is more of a shimmery purple shade, and I'm going to be going all over the lower lash line. I decided to do this because the entire upper lid space is matte, and I wanted to add a little bit of shimmer and a pop of something to the lower lash line. Now for the glitter liner in the crease, I'm taking this silver glitter liner from Urban Decay. I'm looking down into my mirror, trying not to blink or look up at any point because it'll smudge that liquid liner. And I'm just adding small little bits of liner, just section by section, working very slowly because I want to make sure that the sparkles are nice and opaque, so I keep dipping back into the product. And I'm following the natural crease of my eyelid and then bringing it out in just a slightly tapered wing in the outer corner, and then I'm going to be looking down and letting it completely dry before I work on the other side. Now that the glitter liner is done, I want to add a little bit of black eyeliner to my waterline just to make sure that everything is nice and smoky. And then I'm going in with my L'Oreal Telescopic Mascara in Carbon Black and adding a few coats of mascara. For lips, I'm using this Creamy Matte by Bare Minerals in the shade XYZ. And I'm placing this just very lightly all over the lips, and then I'm going to go ahead and smudge it all out with my finger. I do have eczema on my lips, and this day my lips were a little bit more chapped than normal, so I wanted to make sure that I put just a little bit of product around the edges, and then I kind of push the color into my lips with my finger. And this is the finished look.
So that is it for this makeup tutorial. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe, and hopefully I will see you in my next video. Thank you so much. Bye.